Right, so thank you for clicking on the video, peeps. As I said in the last one, this video is going to be a demonstration on how to sharpen knives. So I'll try to cut down the waffle as much as I can in this one. And before I get started, like a bit of a word to the wise, obviously this can be quite a messy task because it involves water and it involves, like, metal parts and filings and all the rest of it. So, before you get started, put on something that you don't mind getting messy and just cut out any variables that are going to distract you and make you think, oh, I need to stop, or and just allow yourself to just get right in the moment. So as I said, let's do that. Okay, so for the benefit of others, and assuming that everyone's not going to want to rush out and buy themselves a really expensive set of stones to start with, I'm just going to do the demonstration with a cheap generic whetstone that can be picked up for about 10-15 quid. And as I said in the previous video, I've got ceramic whetstones that require hardly any lubricant to get going with, whereas this does require a good 10-15 minutes like submersion in water. And what I do is I'll just plonk it in water like this and just leave it there until the bubbles stop coming out of it. So in about 10-15 minutes, like, I'll come back and that should be good to start with, or make a start on. So I'll catch you up in a minute. Okay, so while my whetstone's soaking, I'll just give you a little peep at my little setup that I've got here. So as you can see, I've got a little bucket and a table, and then my actual, a little bucket seat and my table, and then the actual bucket itself with the stones in soaking. And the knife that I'm going to use today is more of an ornament than it is anything, I suppose. It was a gift from my brother years ago. I think he picked it up in TK Maxx for about 15 quid. He's a chef also. And to look at it, you'd probably think it's quite a nice bit of kit, but realistically it is just a bit of tat that was worth about 10-15 quid. So obviously there's going to be skeptics out there that say, how do we know that that knife wasn't blunt to begin with, or sharp to begin with, sorry. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, I've got my little towel to hand. You're always going to need one of these. I'm just going to blunt the knife off in front of you all, so you can say, well, yeah, alright, that's definitely a blunt knife to begin with. So there's a slight edge to it. I'm not going to go too hectic, but if I go like this a couple of times on a good 220 whetstone, that's going to replicate a good couple of weeks use. So as you can see, knife's here and it's just sliding over paper. It won't bite and it won't cut, and I probably could get it to if I really manipulated the paper, but that's not the idea. So as I say, you're all aware that the knife is blunt, and then hopefully by the end of it you'll be made aware that the knife is sharp. Okay, so bearing in mind that not every knife's edge is the same as the next knife's, before you can start sharpening, you first need to figure out what angle to sharpen at. And the way that you ascertain that information is by basically laying the knife flat down on a whetstone and then allowing the primary bevel to become flush with the stone, the secondary bevel, and then you start lifting up onto the primary, and as you do, you start sliding the knife down the whetstone, and as you are, lift up the angle of the knife. So starting low, sliding, lifting up, and all of a sudden you'll feel the knife bite into the stone a lot more than it was. That there is telling you that that's the angle in which you need to sharpen the knife at. So what you can do is put a couple of pennies under the knife or whatever. I mean, I'm past all that stage, so thankfully I don't need to do any of that now, and I know that that's the angle I want to sharpen at. So I'll basically take the knife comfortably in my hand. There's lots of different ways that you can grab the knife. Normally you'll have a proper choil and like a bolster and everything on a knife, but this is obviously a Japanese design, so I can't really grab it in a way that's desirable in order for demonstration purposes, but I'm going to make do with the knife shape and just do the best I can. So knowing that this is the angle that the knife wants to be sharpened at, I'll start what's known as the push and pull method. So start at whichever angle or edge that you feel comfortable, and basically start running the knife up and down the stone. And whilst you're pushing away from you, you want to apply more pressure, and then while you're bringing the knife back towards you, you apply less pressure, and you might even be able to hear that in the noise that's being created. And whilst you're actually sharpening the knife, bear in mind that you're not really sharpening any particular part of the knife unless you're applying pressure on it with your fingers above. So you can do it like this all day long, and it won't really give you great results until you actually start applying pressure at the increments along the knife. And right now that stone's got far too wet, but I kept going just for the benefit of the video to continue explaining as I was demonstrating. But what you'll do is do what's known as passes. So you'll kind of start at one end and just work your way up. And obviously all this muscle memory takes time to perfect. So what I'm doing now is installing this second primary bevel more pronounced. So this is your secondary bevel, this bit here that's like kind of silvery and shiny past all this kind of hammering effect, and then the actual knife's edge itself is the primary bevel. Sorry about the focus. And what I'm doing is just maintaining the knife to the stone on that portion of the blade and trying not to go any further up. And you'll continue to do it until you feel what's known as a burr on this side of the knife. So I've already got a slight one here, but I haven't so much down here. The reason being is this stone's not completely flat. I probably should have flattened it before I started. But in an ideal world, you know, and all that, I can get still get good results. So you stay on one side until you're happy that you've achieved the burr. And obviously while you're using grits, they're a lot like sandpaper, so you want to start off low, being the more abrasive grits, and then as you go up higher, i.e. this is 600 being a lower grit, more abrasive, and then the 1000 being a higher grit, less abrasive, you finish up on the higher grit and start on the lower. So as you can see, I'm maintaining the angle with the knife and the stone, and I'm also moving this hand with two fingers up and down the blade as I'm going backwards and forwards. And what that's doing is allowing more abrasion to take place. And while you're using the whetstone, you always want to try and use as much surface of the whetstone as you can. Try and use all of your stone's real estate. Sorry, that's got too wet there, dry again. You'll know straight away when it gets too dry, because the noise becomes far more kind of like ear piercing and more scrapey. So obviously depending on your skill level, this stage can take anything up to 45-50 minutes. I don't want to put an exact number on it, because then if people take longer they're going to feel inadequate. And when I first started doing this, it took me a lot longer than 40-50 minutes to get to the stage that you would then move up a grit. Oh, this knife's handle is really difficult to keep hold of for a long time. I can already feel my knuckles and hands starting to ache. Sorry if I keep lifting the knife out of shot. So you might be able to hear it. That abrasion noise is basically the burr lifted up and obviously catching my finger. Down here where I haven't quite got one, it's not as loud. So as I say, you just keep going until you get a nice proper burr on one side. And obviously I need to work on the lower portion of the knife more. And this method of push and pull is only applicable to certain knives. different knives will require slightly different methods. You need to kind of incorporate a bit of a swish and a flick action if you've got a really pronounced curve in your blade. I've tried to deliberately pick a flat or straight knife just to kind of keep the demonstration simple. But if I've got like a curve in my blade or what have you, what you'd have to do is kind of incorporate this action into it, because if you just kept going straight up and down, what you'd do is you'd round off the knife's curve, and then obviously the design of the knife would be spoiled and perhaps wouldn't no longer function as it had been intended for. But like I say, this is quite a straight knife, so I can just kind of keep the demonstration simple. Right. Some people will say that you need to be completely mindful of how many passes you do on one side versus the other. As you can see, I wasn't counting any of that. I basically just go by feel, and there's a fairly decent burr now from about here upwards. I still need a little bit more here, but go for a bit longer. And it's not all about power and force. A lot of whetstoning, particularly on the higher grits, you use less pressure. So when you start off on the low grits, you can be quite, firm with your pressure application. But as you go up the grits, you want to apply less pressure, because what you'll do is you'll ruin that lovely little edge that you've made. It's obviously a delicate thing, and if you're still being really forceful higher up the grits, you're just going to bend it over on itself and ruin it, and you kind of need to ease up on the pressure as you go up the grits. So this doesn't go on for too long. I'll start the other side. And this is a little bit of a tricky bit. I'm left-handed, okay, so when you're sharpening the knife in the hand that you're prominent with is easy, okay, because you're more comfortable. When you want to do the other side, you have to then either become some sort of cag-handed master, or you have to become ambidextrous. So obviously, to get the other side of the blade now, what I'd need to do is go like this, maintaining the same angle, and go through all the motions again. I'm not very rehearsed in doing it that way, because I am ever so slightly ambidextrous, and I can actually do the same thing with my right hand for the opposite side of the blade as I can with my left hand. So I find it easier to just switch over. I appreciate that there's many people that out there that won't find that easy, but you're going to have to find what's easy for you. So like I say, switch over, find that edge again, so bringing it down, there it is, boom, straight away it cuts into the stone. You're like, right, that's the angle I need to work with. So starting at the bottom again, do apologise for the noise that this makes. I appreciate it's not the most nicest noise to hear. As I go up in grits, the abrasion noise is less, so you won't hear this as much when I change over sides of the stone. I can already kind of feel in here that the knife's about ready to come off of this grit. It didn't need a huge amount of material being removed anyway. So I can feel that I've transferred the burr over onto this side now, particularly near the top. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. Just before you do transfer over onto the next grit up that you intend to use, it's a good idea to just kind of clean off the knife, clean off the stone as well, obviously, because that can get embedded if you just leave it. And basically just do a light kind of stropping pass. So just a couple of times. this is something I will be quite particular in counting, you know, side versus side, you know, and try and get the number of times equal on both. And what I've just done then is hopefully just removed a bit of the particulates and the, you know, the parts that make up the whetstone, and removed it, and obviously just kind of smoothed off the knife's edge, just to allow the transition to this grit a lot, you know, become a lot smoother. So again, starting off on this side, you just want to repeat the process that you started on the other side, and again work until you find the burr on this one side. Okay, so it's starting to come over on this side. It takes a little bit longer on the higher grits because obviously less abrasion's taking place. Just dropped it slightly before I go on to this side. It's quite awkward for me to do it like this with a camera in the way, but I hope you're all getting the idea. I think next time, if I ever have to do this again for a video, I'll have a slightly different setup. As I say, hopefully you're getting the idea, and hopefully this isn't too boring for most of you. Okay, so just going to wet this off a bit more. And for the most part, you're basically just repeating the same thing over and over. And then as you go up the grits, you're getting a more refined and a more sharper edge. Obviously don't go up grits until you achieve burrs, because you're just rushing the process and not actually going to end up where you need to be. It's important that you take your time with this. I know it doesn't necessarily look like I am, but obviously I'm wasting your guys' time if I'm taking too long in it. It's simply just a demonstration, and hopefully at the end of it you'll have some sort of confidence to go about it yourself. You know, I mean, this does take concentration, and I'm managing to do it whilst talking to the camera and holding some sort of a half decent, you know, bit of information for you all. So anything's possible. And don't be put off by this either. For years I wanted to do this and was often thinking, oh, you know, it's too hard. Everybody says you need to be a master at this and a master at that, and it just takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of patience, and by the end of it, you know, every knife in your collection will be nice and sharp, and there's no need to go and buy a new knife every time you get a blunt knife, or, you know, there's no need to give it to somebody else to do it for you. You know, you can learn this skill as well. It's not hard. Right, so I'm going to carry on with this and crack on, and then I'll bring you back when it's all nice and sharp. Okay, so I've just given the knife a quick strop in, just to kind of like hone the edge, as it were. And all you basically do is just run the knife up and down the lever gently, at a slight less incline to what you was meeting the knife to the stone to. And basically, just to give you an idea of how sharp it is, hopefully I can kind of demonstrate this. There's a good bit. So that's basically the hair coming off of my arm. Obviously it's razor sharp. You can see it's all on the, well, just about make it out in this portion. There's hair all over the blade. And where's that bit of paper gone? Obviously before it was just skating over the paper. So it's quite difficult to do this with my arm over the back of the camera, but You get the idea, right? The knife sharp. I need to find a better way of showing that on camera, but basically I can now sharpen, you know, shave my arm hair with it. I can cut paper. Obviously I could go a bit further with the knife and kind of refine it more and what have you, but you know, it's definitely better than it was. And if I wasn't trying to get my arm around the back of a camera tripod, I could have demonstrated that a lot better. But as I say, hopefully it just gives you an idea and a visible demonstration that the knife originally wouldn't do that. And obviously I've now got ball patches all up my arm as well, just for kicks. As you can see, I look like a freaking turkey. But anyway, thank you for watching. I do appreciate you guys watching the videos, and you know, considering it's nothing to do with air guns or what have you. As I said in the video before all this, I will have a review of the BSA Ultra coming up soon. I've already made a start on it and everything, so I just need to get my ass out there and record it basically. So again, thanks to everyone for watching. I hope it's given you you know, a bit of encouragement to go and do a bit of knife sharpening yourself if it was something you was thinking about doing. And if you guys could give this a like, I would really appreciate it, as I've put a few hours into this video. And yeah, I mean this, look out for future videos as they will be coming. And yeah, thanks very much for your time. Cheers for watching.